Hey guys, today in Music 154 we're going to go through a step-by-step process for analyzing rounded binary forms. Okay, so a reminder of all the steps that we have to go through, the levels of form that we have to go through when we're doing form analysis. The first largest level is the section, and we label those with A and B. Then we go down in the sections to phrases, which are typically 4 measures long, although there can be some variations in that. Inside of phrases, we have 2-measure ideas. And inside of those 2-measure ideas, we usually have 1-measure motives. As you're doing these structural levels, you also want to see if you can spot signs of sentence form or period form. So remember, the sentence is like 2 plus 2, and then it leads to a continuation to the cadence. So it's 8 measures, and there's only 1 cadence at the end of those 8 measures. Period form is clearly these 2 4-bar phrases that are related to one another. Usually the first part of the period is the same theme in each phrase, and then the cadences are different from one another. So you want to try to spot whether you're following a sentence format or a period format. Alright, so here's the first piece that I want to study. It's Für Elise by Beethoven, which I admit is kind of a cheesy selection on my part, but it's such a famous melody, and it's a rounded binary form, which I wanted you to know. And then the other thing that I want you to know is that it's a really sophisticated and beautiful piece of music. So we're going to see why through our analysis. The first step to any analysis is just listening to the piece, okay? And as you listen to the piece, if you'll think back to the last lecture, number 4, we were following pop music and counting the measures and counting the phrases. It's the same exact thing here. We want to do this. We want to do the same process where we're listening, counting measures, and trying to understand where the musical ideas begin and end, okay? Because it's through your ear that you understand the most. Okay, always trust your ear, number 1, above everything else. Number 2, we're going to do a Roman numeral analysis and try to determine where the cadences lie. Okay, now I've already included that here because I'm assuming that you already are good at Roman numeral analysis and labeling cadences. This class is just to sort of teach you how to group those observations into formal contexts. So I'm not going to explain too much of my Roman numeral analysis. I will if I need to in future examples, but this one is pretty straightforward. Then while you're doing your Roman numeral analysis, you're going to start to notice the sections and the phrases, okay? So I've got my first A section here, the first line of music. Remember, in rounded binary form, we call this the exposition. The first A section is the exposition. Then we have a contrasting B section, which we call the contrasting middle. And then we return to the A section, or we call it A prime. And the other term for that is recapitulation. Okay, so remember, exposition, contrasting middle, and recapitulation. So I've marked off all of my large sections. Now let's go one level down from there and try to understand how this thing is put together. All right, you'll see that I've got my first 4 bars marked off with an IAC at the end of it because it goes 151. Now, every time you see a 151 like that, it doesn't always mean that there's a cadence. And I'm still on the fence about this one because there hasn't really been a huge progression, and when I listened to it, I didn't feel like there was a large moment of conclusion there. But what I did feel like was that these are two clear 4-bar phrases that are related to one another. They both start the same way with this really famous chromatic little arabesque motive that Beethoven uses, okay? And then they go through a 1 and a 5 and a 1, and then the same thing happens in the second phrase, where you've got the motive again, and the same 1 and the same 5, and then this time the 1 ends on scale degree 1 in soprano. So that's why I put PAC here and IAC there, because they just, whether or not you want to call this a cadence in the first 4 bars, these two phrases just work off of each other. Okay, one of them cadences on scale degree 3 in the soprano, one of them cadences on scale degree 1, and that's so clear to me. So I've selected to label this as a period. Okay, it follows periodic form. You've got your two phrases, okay, and you can call this an IAC, you can call this a PAC. Inside of those phrases, you're also going to watch out for the 2-measure ideas, or the basic idea, as a lot of theory books call it. And here it is, okay, the famous tune. First 2 bars of the melody is your first 2-measure idea. It goes from 5/7 to 1, and the melody starts on scale degree 5 with a little chromatic decoration, and then moves down through the scale to 1. All right, the second 2-measure idea is actually the cadential idea. But like you see, it's not so cadential. There's not a predominant, there isn't a lot of harmonic rhythm. It's a 5 chord going to a 1 chord. That's why I'm still kind of on the fence about that. But it does last 2 measures. Okay, you've got your 5 with scale degree 2, and the voice leading moves to 1 with scale degree 3 in the soprano. Next 4-bar phrase, same beginning. Okay, the first 2-measure idea is the famous Für Elise motive, and then landing on scale degree 1 in the soprano over a 1 chord. And then the next 2-measure idea, and you want to follow the voice leading with these 2-measure ideas. You see, like this one, I've got my 5 to 1 in my bass, and then I've got scale degree 2 going to scale degree 1. And that to me is a very clear move. Scale degree 2, and then a little decoration, and then landing on scale degree 1. That's the voice leading of these 2 bars. Okay, so these 2-measure ideas are kind of like voice leading dance steps, if you will. It's like, what chord am I going from to what chord? And in soprano, what's my melody tone, and how do I get to the next melody tone? Okay, those are your voice leading parameters for 2-measure ideas. All right, now I got my phrases marked, my cadences marked, and my 2-measure ideas marked off. Inside of those 2-measure ideas, we have motives. And this I've labeled motive X, although I could have also chosen the Für Elise motive for a name for it because it's such an iconic motive. Okay, that's the motive. It's got your little chromatic neighbors and the 16th notes and little curly Q gesture landing on scale degree 1. That is motive X. The next measure I'm calling motive Y. The other thing when you're doing motivic analysis is you also want to like scan ahead to see whether or not certain segments of your basic ideas function as motives later on in the piece. So scale degree, motive Y here is kind of like an arpeggiation, right? You've got 3 16th notes and then 3 more 16th notes, first in the left hand, then in the right hand. And why am I saying that that's motive Y? Well, if you go to skip ahead to the contrasting B section, you can see that the whole thing is kind of built off of motive Y, and that motive X is completely out of the picture. All right, that's part of what makes it a contrasting B section. And then I'll sort of ruin the surprise. When we make it to the end of our B section, by this half cadence, you can start to see that, and this is the part that all piano students learn how to do, you get these sort of octave leaps spanning both hands and then back and forth. You can sort of see that motive X in these 2 measures here is starting to materialize. Okay, so this is why I say this is a sophisticated piece of music. That motive X is coming out of motive Y organically. And then when we get to measure 15 and the return of A prime here, motive X is in full form once again. Okay, so Beethoven uses these 2 bars to materialize motive X again, right? He's gone away from it, and now he's putting it back together segment by segment. All right, so we've already kind of analyzed this, but you've got your phrase here in this B section, okay, from measure 9 until measure 12. And each two measure idea breaks down to, like, this is a descending third sequence, so each portion of the sequence is 2 bars long and there's a voice leading to it, right? This you can think of as C major 1 to 5 in C major, and it's scale degree 3 going to scale degree 2. And then you can think of the next part as 1 to 5 in the tonic, scale degree 3 going to scale degree 2. So this is a sequence. C major is also a logical choice in the key of A minor because it's the relative major. So whenever we're in minor mode, the move is always going to be to the relative major if we're doing any kind of modulations or tonicizations. So here we've got a little, I'm going to call it a tonicization, even though it's not, there's no accidentals. We're kind of operating in C major for measures 9 and 10. Measures 11 and 12 then back to A minor. Okay, and I've marked this off as a half cadence. Okay, so we landed on the 5, and then you can see that my Roman numeral analysis, I've got this sort of extender line going all the way through here. These 2 bars are not part of the form. These 2 bars are what we call an extension. And like I said before, Beethoven kind of takes 2 extra bars outside of this phrase here in the B section to materialize motive X for its return here in bar 15. All right, so now I'm in my third section, my A prime section. And again, we call this rounded binary because when A prime comes back, we've got the original key and the original motive all back together. But the B section and the A prime section both repeat together. Okay, so this is really a large 2-part form, but the second part is a little longer than the first part, and it repeats. All right, so now I'm on my third section, and I'm going section by section here. Oh, sorry, motive Y there and motive X. Okay, so let's keep our focus on the A prime section. I'm going section by section here for the phrase and then the idea and the motive analysis. Okay, so each section I go through, I'm going to go levels all the way to the bottom in each section. So now back to my A prime section. I got a 4-bar phrase and another 4-bar phrase. Each of those ends in a cadence. Again, I'm a little on the fence about this as a cadence, but the phrases just seem to operate like a period. And this is, again, you have to use musical intuition and common sense when you're doing analysis because terms and definitions are not always reflective of the reality. Okay, you have to use your musical instincts over everything else. All right, so we've got the same 2-measure ideas as in the A section. This is literally a repeat of that. And we got motive X and motive Y once again. Okay, so this is a rounded binary form for Elise Beethoven. That's how the piece starts, and this is what we would call the theme. Then you can see there's a continuation, and it goes off into what we would call an episode. And then this theme comes back, and then there's another episode, and then the same theme comes back again at the end. So this is actually a part of a larger form called a rondo, but inside of it we've got this really well-constructed rounded binary form theme, the Für Elise theme. Let's listen to it one more time now that we've got our analysis all done. my next rounded binary form. This is a piece that I was playing on piano last semester for practice. I'm not that good, as you can tell. It's by Haydn, who's my favorite composer. And it's from his first piano sonata, and this is the Minuet. So remember that when we looked at the small forms listed by Koch, that theorist from the 18th century, Minuet was one of them. Okay, so you can kind of think of this as a little bit of a dance, and you could think of little characters dancing around in here. So let's keep that image in mind, and let's give this a listen. All right, so remember, the listening is always the most important step. You want to keep what you heard clear in your mind as you start to do your analysis. Always listen first, and then go to the score and start to dig in for some details, because then some really beautiful things start to appear in your analysis. But your instincts, what you heard, is always the most important. So after listening, the next step is to do a Roman numeral analysis, which I've already done. Again, I'm trusting that you are good at Roman numeral analysis by now, and that you can label and spot a cadence. So there you have it. In the course of the Roman numeral analysis, you'll begin to notice where the cadences fall, where the sections fall, and that's when you're going to start to think about where you're going to label those large sections. So this particular piece is another rounded binary example, and I've got A, my contrasting middle B, and my recapitulation A prime. All right, let's take a look now at inside of each section, how we're going to go from a section to a phrase to an idea to a motive. Because this is the process every single time. There's no cadence until measure 8 here. Now some of you might argue with me and say, hey, wait a minute, Für Elise was a cadence, and now this one you have a 5/7 going to a 1, and you've got scale degree 4 with a trill resolving to scale degree 3, and I would say, you know what, you're right, that probably is a cadence. And when I heard it, it sounded kind of like a cadence. But then again, you have to use kind of like your judgment here and see what's going on. Now, I don't feel like there's a real period structure here. Like we've got a 2-measure idea, okay, and it actually repeats like ba ba da 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 ba da 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 ba da 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 da. Okay, so we're here now. We got our 2 measures and 2 more measures. Now here too, you could also say that there's 2 measures and then 2 measures. But look at the chords now. 2-6-5 for a full bar, and then 5-5-4-2, 1-6, 5-6-5, 1-5, and a half cadence. So the harmonic rhythm has sped up here towards the end, and you can see that now we've got more notes going on. And to me, it just sounds like these last 4 bars are a continuation into a cadence rather than a periodic structure. So again, cadences aren't the end-all be-all of our analysis. Sometimes common sense and musical judgment come into play. So I'm going to label that cadential, these last 4 bars. Looking at my first 2-measure idea, measure 1, motive X is the quarter note followed by 2 sets of triplets. And motive X kind of dominates the first 2 2-measure ideas. The end of the second 2-measure idea I've labeled as motive Y, which is the half note falling to a quarter note. And I haven't labeled them further, but you can see maybe here you might want to call this a motive X, and here you might want to call this a motive Y prime, because now the quarter note is up a step from the half note. And then here definitely there's no more motives, it is a cadence. But altogether, like I said, this is kind of like another on the fence example. You've got this 2-6-5 chord all the way going to 5, 1-6. This is actually what they call an evaded cadence, because 2-6-5 to 5 is a strong cadential move, and you're waiting for that 1 to happen, but instead the bass pushes down through 5-4-2 to 1-6 for an evaded cadence, and then 5-6-5 goes to 1 and then lands on the 5 for a half cadence. Taking a look now at the B section. This is 4 bars only, so it's kind of just a phrase. Okay. Not too much by way of contrast here, because you can see that I've got 2-measure idea and then another 2-measure idea. Okay. Filling up the B section. This is a single phrase ending in a half cadence. Motivically though, this is motive X and then motive Y. Okay, so stuff from before is coming back here, and then motive X happens again here, and then motive Y happens again here. A thing that you'll kind of also want to notice is that it's sort of sequential, because you've got 1 going to 5-7-4 going to 4, and then this is the resolution. And again, when I have my 2-measure ideas, I'm always looking at the voice leading, right? So I'm going scale degree 5 above scale degree 3 in the bass, so this should be 1-6. Then you've got the B flat. So now this is changing key. So this is scale degree 4 in F major, and that resolves to scale degree 3 in F major. Okay, so the voice leading resolves over the bar right there. And that's how the 2-measure ideas work. It's a voice leading move. Now we're looking over here. The next 2-measure idea is really the C of the 5-6-5 of 5 resolving to B by the end here, and the F sharp resolving to the G. Okay, so 5-6-5 of 5 going to 5. And we've got our half cadence. So this whole thing is basically 2 steps, from 1 to 4 and then from 2 to 5. So it's kind of like a sequence, although the music is not literally repeating itself. All right, now let's take a look at A prime. So we're harmonically set up because we've had a half cadence and we're ending on 5, and so we're ready to come back to 1. And so we have our one long arc of a phrase mark ending in a PAC, 2-measure idea plus 2-measure idea, and a cadential continuation. And this time, instead of a half cadence, Haydn ends it on a PAC. And then we've got motive X once again, and motive Y once again. Here I'd say motive X and motive Y, and then this part here, these last 2 bars, are kind of like a liquidation. There's no more motives, and it's a cadential figure going straight down. All right, so now this is another rounded binary form, and we have completed our analysis of it. You can see again that there's some ambiguous situations, like whether you want to call this a cadence or not. If you call it a cadence, this is going to take on like a period type structure, but it seems like the music is continuing through that to me, because it doesn't start again on 1, and it doesn't start with the same real sense of that opening motive. It's kind of like a continuation, both harmonically and motivically, all the way to the end. So for me, this is more sentence-like than period-like. Okay, so that's why I didn't label this as an IAC. Instead, I wanted to look at this as more as I heard it more as a sentence structure. But the analysis is done. Okay, from the Roman numerals to the sections to the phrases to the ideas down to the motives. And as you saw, I think we noticed some interesting features of the piece that maybe we didn't quite notice just listening to it. Let's listen one more time now that we've done our analysis. All right, so that'll do it. Those are some really great pieces, and you can see that they have some really unique challenges to their analysis. Challenges are always okay. Let's go ahead and see what it's like to do some analysis of simple binary forms.